On the morning of June 24, 1955, a man appeared at the border crossing near Orawska Polhora, a small mountain village on the Polish-Czechoslovak frontier. He had no documents, no identification, no explanation for who he was or why he was there. Border guards questioned him. He did not respond. He appeared to be deaf and mute. In writing, he identified himself as Karel Novák, born 1934, in the village of Radhošť. His family, he wrote, had been separated during the Second World War. He had been sent to an institution for the deaf in Graz, Austria, and repatriated afterward. He remembered little else. He was 21 years old, or so he claimed. Czechoslovak authorities detained him for 6 months. They found nothing to contradict his story. No one came forward to claim him. No missing persons report matched his description. In December 1955, for lack of evidence, they released him. But they did not forget him. The STB, the Czechoslovak State Security, opened a file, case number N44. They assigned informants to watch him. They wanted to know who Karel Novák really was. What they found over the next 6 years would not answer that question. It would only deepen it. Karel Novák was not what he appeared. He was not deaf. He was not mute. He was not, in any probability, 21 years old. And his presence at that border crossing in 1955, unannounced, undocumented, with a story that held together just well enough to be believed, had the hallmarks of something deliberate. Someone had sent him there, or he had sent himself. The STB spent 26 years trying to find out which. They never did. After his release in December 1955, Karel Novák settled into ordinary life in Czechoslovakia. He found work. He kept to himself for the most part. The STB kept watching. Their primary informant was a man named František Weiss, a trusted contact who spent years in close proximity to Karel. What Weiss reported back to his handlers was difficult to reconcile with the person Karel claimed to be. Karel Novák was not uneducated. He was not a simple rural man separated from his family by the chaos of war. He was extraordinarily knowledgeable. He could discuss philosophy, economics, political theory, and art at a level that suggested serious formal education, the kind unavailable to a deaf child raised in a wartime institution. He had encyclopedic knowledge of subjects that required years of dedicated study. And then there were the languages. Karel Novák was fluent in Czech, Slovak, German, English, Polish, and Russian. He also had functional command of French and Italian. 6 languages, with 2 more at a conversational level. For someone who claimed to have spent his formative years in a deaf institution with no family and no formal education, this was not possible. In 1957, Karel joined the Communist Party. His grasp of Marxist theory was, according to party officials, exceptional, not the rote recitation of a new convert, the fluency of someone who had studied it for years. Then came military service. In his unit, Karel Novák was the best marksman. He knew how to operate tanks, and he was observed photographing military equipment and buildings. Not openly, not carelessly, but in the way of someone who understood exactly what they were doing and why. The STB noted all of it. They opened additional surveillance files. They escalated the case. They still had no idea who he was. In May 1961, the STB arrested Karel Novák on charges of espionage and conspiracy against the state. At the moment of arrest, he did something unexpected. He told investigators that his name was not Karel Novák. He said he did not know who he was. He had maintained the identity for 6 years. Now he abandoned it entirely. Under interrogation, a more complicated story emerged. He claimed to be the son of Otto von Habsburg, the last heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, living in exile in the West. He said he had been raised in Poland, taken to the Soviet city of Magnitogorsk during the war, and had made his way back to Central Europe in 1948. He had crossed into Czechoslovakia as a fugitive, using the false identity to survive. No one believed him. The claim was unverifiable. Otto von Habsburg was alive and living in the West. Any direct confirmation was impossible under Cold War conditions. An anthropological examination placed his real age at between 27 and 35, not 21, as the 1955 documents stated. A psychiatric evaluation concluded that he showed a psychological anomaly with psychopathic traits, but that he was not insane. He was, they noted, of above-average intelligence. One investigative lead came close to something concrete. A woman from Krakow believed he might be her son, a boy named Florian Grabowski, deported to Auschwitz during the war. At a direct meeting, she looked at him and said no. He did not recognize her either. The lead was abandoned. In June 1962, Karel Novák was sentenced to 12 years in a political prison. He served his time in facilities connected to the glass and mining industries, the kind of work assigned to political detainees. He was released conditionally in 1969. He moved to Kladno, a city near Prague, and found work as a bus driver. In 1972, the STB tried a different approach. They produced a documentary film about the N44 case, footage of Karel, details of his story, and distributed it publicly, hoping that someone in Czechoslovakia might recognize him. Nobody did. One name came up, a Ukrainian nationalist from 1947 who reportedly resembled Karel. Investigators interviewed him. He did not understand Ukrainian, not even basic comprehension. The lead went nowhere. A man named Havlicek attempted suicide shortly after the documentary aired. Investigators considered whether this was connected to the case. They concluded it was probably a coincidence. In 1973, the N44 file was quietly recommended for closure. In August 1974, it was officially closed. Karel Novák continued to live in Czechoslovakia. He drove a bus. He kept to himself. On November 17, 1981, he was found dead in his apartment. The cause of death was listed as sudden cardiac arrest. Toxicology returned negative. But the apartment had been searched before authorities arrived. Items had been disturbed. A chemical substance of unknown origin was found on his belongings. And among his possessions, a radio transmitter, one capable of receiving foreign signals. After his death, the STB conducted a brief review. No new conclusions were reached. In 1989, the communist government fell. The archives were opened, researchers returned to the file. They found no answers. 26 years of surveillance, an arrest, a trial, a documentary, a death with a searched apartment, and an unidentified chemical substance, and still no confirmed identity. 4 theories have been proposed for who Karel Novák was. None of them hold cleanly. The first, a Western intelligence operative, a spy working for the CIA, MI6, or another Cold War agency. This theory accounts for most of the anomalies: the 6 languages, the military knowledge and marksmanship, the photographing of installations, the radio transmitter capable of receiving foreign signals. The cold professionalism with which he maintained a false identity for 6 years before abandoning it entirely under arrest. The problem, if he was a Western agent, why didn't he leave when he had the opportunity? By the late 1950s, a skilled operative with his apparent capabilities would have had options. If his mission ended, or if he was burned, a trained intelligence professional would have found a way out. He didn't, or he chose not to. The second theory, a Ukrainian nationalist, a member of the UPA or a related post-war organization, fleeing Soviet repression after 1945, using a false identity to survive in a country where his actual background would have made him a target. The STB investigated this directly and excluded it. He did not understand Ukrainian, not even basic comprehension. For a Ukrainian nationalist, this is not a minor gap. The third theory is his own, that he was the son of Otto von Habsburg. Otto von Habsburg was real. He was alive. He had children. After 1989, verification was theoretically possible. Researchers looked. No confirmation was ever established. The fourth theory is the most human, and in some ways the most difficult to dismiss. A man, origin unknown, had done something or survived something or witnessed something that required him to disappear completely. A collaborator who had made enemies, a survivor of something he could not name, someone who had reinvented himself so thoroughly that even under arrest, under interrogation, facing years in a political prison, he could not or would not say who he had been before. The radio transmitter points somewhere specific. The search department suggests someone knew when he died or expected it. But no theory resolves all of the evidence, and no identity was ever established. After 1989, the archives of the Czechoslovak state security were gradually opened to researchers. The N44 file became accessible through the Archiv bezpečnostních složek, the archive of security services based in Prague. Investigators, journalists, and researchers reviewed the material. They found extensive documentation, interrogation transcripts, surveillance reports, informant correspondence, anthropological and psychiatric evaluations, footage from the 1972 documentary. They also found a problem. In 2018, journalist Jaroslav Mareš discovered that the address listed in Karel Novák's official documents, the address he had used throughout his years in Czechoslovakia, did not exist. The street, as recorded, was not a real location. It had never been. He had given authorities a false address. For decades, no one had checked. As of 2026, the identity of Karel Novák remains unestablished. The mugshots taken in 1955 and again in 1961 are available in the public archive. His handwritten notes from the first interrogation survive. The STB surveillance reports document 26 years of observation. The file is thorough. It simply doesn't answer the central question. A man arrived at a mountain border crossing in Czechoslovakia. He claimed amnesia. He claimed deafness. He spoke 6 languages. He photographed military installations. He carried a radio capable of reaching the West. He died with a search department and an unidentified substance on his belongings. Somewhere, there is a name that belongs to him. It has not been found. Case Dormant. The next file is open.